All right, I'm going to go ahead and call our December 7th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody here in the office and everybody who's joining us on the computer. We will skip the approval of minutes until the next meeting. The first thing I will do is a roll call, and I'll just go from right to left of where we normally sit, just to make sure that I know who's here. When I do call votes, if they're unanimous, I'll just go ahead and do it on a.
I don't know if anyone can hear us, but the council chambers has been muted.
I can hear you. Buford, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear the council chambers.
But if it's not if it's a unanimous vote, I won't do a roll call. If it's not a unanimous vote, I will do a roll call. So I'm going to start with the roll call right now to see who's here. Art, Rebecca,
here.
Harry, and I'm here. Holly,
Here.
Clarice,
Here.
all right. Jason,
Here.
all right. And Jimmy Conyers, I see here in person, and I've been told that John is not here. Is that correct, John? All right, we'll assume that silence means John is not here, as we had assumed. All right, I'm going to change the agenda just slightly. I'm going to move one item up, and then we're going to follow the agenda regular. I'm going to take item H, the request of the AT&T 115211 utility review. We're going to look at that first, and then we're going to slide back to the agenda in its regular order at that point. Hunter, do you want to make a presentation on that, or do you want me to see if there's anybody here from AT&T?
Buford's going to handle a quick presentation on the utility review.
All right, Buford.
And I'm sorry.
Tim Hawkins is on the phone with AT&T.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Tim, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Buford, can you hear us?
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, it's very difficult to hear what you're saying in the council chambers.
Okay, is it better if I get up close to the microphone like this?
Okay, that's better. That's better.
Okay, and Buford, let me make one quick comment. We do have our new legal counsel here. Chris Williams is here with us from Hand-Arundel. So if any members at any point in the meeting have any questions legally, you can certainly direct those toward Chris, who's in attendance here in the office. All right, Buford, you're up.
And Mr. Chairman, if we could ask everyone else to mute. On our end, we're hearing a lot of clatter and paper shuffling and that sort of thing. So if everyone else could mute, please, and we'll jump right into this utility review. I've shared my screen. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
All right, very good. So commissioners, planning commissioners and staff, we'll jump right into we'll start off with this utility review submitted by AT&T. Commissioners, this is going to be the first time we've had the actual combined review, so indulge me just a moment. The case number, as you see, is an 115211 utility review submitted by AT&T. This also is going to include the review required by the small cell site ordinance. 61679 is the ordinance number adopted by the city council. So what we're looking at are two things here. 75 linear feet of fiber optic cable within conduit, replacing an existing wooden pole that has overhead fiber, and then attaching a small cell antenna and necessary equipment to that wooden pole. I will show you a map showing where this work occurs. If you see the screen you have before you right now, the underground work you see is on the west side of the Baldwin County Satellite Courthouse. The new wooden pole that would contain the small cell antenna equipment is on the east side, marked there on that aerial image. Not as critical on this time, but so you're aware, this is the zoning districts around it. Now, the property adjacent to this right-of-way is county commission property, so the zoning classifications aren't necessarily applicable. Here's a drawing provided by AT&T shows in greater detail where the small cell site will go in relation to the existing buildings around. You see the Unitarian Church, you see the satellite courthouse. Here's a drawing of the actual antenna and equipment on the wooden pole. And here are some photographs of a similar installation provided to us by AT&T. Commissioners, we can come back to any of these slides if we need to. Commissioners, this is just the general comments we make about various Fairhope requirements when we have a utility review. Won't spend a bunch of time going through this, as this is pretty standard. The additional comments, this is where we pick up about the small cell site ordinance. And you see the paragraph right there is copied directly from your staff report in your packets. But basically, we're using the 115211 as a conduit to get this in front of the Planning Commission, which satisfies the 115211 review, but also satisfies the review process in the small cell ordinance. Looking at the criteria within the small cell ordinance, we've identified 4 criteria that we think are of concern with this particular application. 1, the visual impact. 2, the character of the area where it will be placed. 3, the appearance and placement of the proposed small cell site, dealing with aesthetics consistent with the immediate area. And then 4, co-location. Co-location is very important, where you can place an antenna on an existing structure, on an existing pole, or other areas where it'd be more advantageous to co-locate one of these antenna arrays rather than install a new one. So as a result, the staff recommendation is to recommend to the Planning Commission to recommend to the City Council denial of case UR 20.07, that a recommendation for denial be submitted to the City Council. And you see the 4 criteria we mentioned earlier. What I'll do is give you the comment for each one. For criteria 1, the location near the Baldwin County Satellite Courthouse, as well as several churches, residences, and the newly expanded school campus. 2, the subject area is likely capable of supporting a small cell site, but there are other location options more compatible with the area that are not considered by this application. 3, the existing wooden pole that's there now is somewhat obscured by vegetation, but the new taller pole and all the equipment placed on it could very well be unsightly appearing in that area. And number 4, several co-locate opportunities are possible in this area, and this application did not contemplate any of those co-locates. Commissioners, happy to answer questions on behalf of staff.
Are there any questions for Buford at this time by the commissioners? If not, I'll see, does anybody from AT&T wish to make a presentation at this time?
Yeah, Tim Hawkins is on the line with AT&T, and we actually, our initial application was located on a pole that existed in the right-of-way outside of the courthouse, and we were asked to not do that and to move further east down the road and place a new pole. So I'm kind of confused as to what you're looking for here. Because AT&T owns poles in that wooden pole line, and we were, our first location was to co-locate on a pole that already exists, and we were told no, that you didn't want the small cell outside of the front door of the courthouse to move further east. So that's why we're placing a new pole.
Do you know who told you that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if Mr. Chairman, it's very hard to hear you, but this is Buford. I'll just jump back in here very quickly. Is that when we were made aware of this case, for coordination purposes, we contacted the county commission and they got involved. And I think the result of that was not placing it directly in front of the front door of the courthouse. So certainly that's, an improvement, but the issue is still the same. There are numerous co-locate opportunities that could be explored.
All right, thank you, Buford.
Mr. Chairman, this is Hunter.
So from AT&T's standpoint, I don't know. There's not an existing structure outside of the pole that we initially tried to locate on that would hold our equipment without replacing that pole as well. I mean, I know there was brought up in the past to get on a light pole in the parking lot of the courthouse, something like that. Those poles wouldn't hold our equipment. So I think I was under the assumption we kind of worked out a location that was out of the view of the main entrance of the courthouse and was kind of out of the view of everybody. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised by the denial. I'm kind of taken aback by it. I thought our initial application was to co-locate on an existing pole, and that's what everything that I'm looking at right now is saying we should do that, and that was our initial application. And also, just to point out, this is not, the location of the small cell is not something that, AT&T, that we kind of went, this is directly like a request by the courthouse and by the state house rep to fix the service inside of the courthouse. We aren't proactively pursuing this location. This is to fix a problem inside of the courthouse.
Just a sound check. Can you hear me, Buford?
And one more. I mean, we're talking about placing a wooden pole in a wooden pole line that already exists.
Sound check. Can you hear me, Buford?
Hunter, barely, but we can hear you, yes.
Okay. During our DRC meeting, we did approach AT&T about co-locating on a light pole in the county parking lot that's 10 feet away, and we haven't heard anything about that option. I know the existing structure probably wouldn't work, but there is an opportunity to replace that. And we don't know if the county would be in favor of that, but we just never heard anything back. So we want to exhaust all opportunities for co-locating before we are approving new poles in the right of way.
So are you saying that, well, it seems like maybe there's some lack of communication between the county and the city then?
That's probably fair.
I mean, if the county wants something done in the courthouse, right? Is that what it is? Well, that's what I just heard anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I agree. I mean, you can have these things stuck up all over the place, and it'd be about as unsightly as anything you can imagine.
Right.
Except for a big tower.
Mm-hmm.
But would y'all's opinion change if it was on a pole that you just referenced?
Yeah, I think there's products out there that could support both a light and a small cell, and I'm not sure if the county would be amenable to that, but at least exhaust that option. And
sounds to me like maybe there needs to be some coordination with the county.
who do we have with AT&T? I'm sorry, we're not in person. Tim, have y'all reached out to? Tim, have you reached out to the county and talked to them about replacing the existing light pole with a product that you could mount an antenna on?
No, we haven't talked about that. We haven't talked about that directly, just because there's not a pole. The only thing we talked about the county was locating. They asked us to locate on the tower that's behind the building, but that wasn't going to work. So the only thing. No, we didn't talk directly about locating on one of their light poles. I just know from experience in building, several thousand roofs in the past, those lights that are out there won't hold the equipment, so we'd have to replace the existing equipment. Or replace the existing structure.
Yeah, I think we're aware of that. It would require a different infrastructure to house both, but, perhaps this has got to go to council. You can at least reach out to the county and see if that's an option. We'll be happy to work with you in between now and when it does go to council.
Okay.
Yeah, all I was asked for in between the DRC meeting and this meeting was a palette of colors that a metal pole, that we could do a metal pole in the right of way. So I supplied that, and that's the last I've heard. I mean, it just came up in the DRC that we were going to be required to go on one of the county poles over the 600 in the past.
Chairman, Commissioners, this is Buford. It is extremely difficult to hear on our end. So if this hasn't been said, I just wanted to mention it very briefly, is that during the DRC meeting, we asked for possible co-locates on other locations. I don't know if that was mentioned.
Holly, are you having trouble hearing?
Just sometimes it sounds like people's microphones are a little muted.
Okay.
Like they're just not real clear.
I was just trying to see
A
if
lot
that
of
was,
reverberation.
I was just trying to see if that was just Buford or someone else. Okay.
See, that didn't sound very clear.
Okay, thank you. How about that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Should we hold this over or see if they want to hold it over for another meeting? And can we do that, or do we have to vote on this, Hunter?
And Commissioners, this is not a public hearing, so we don't have to adhere to that same public hearing criteria. If there's a desire to hold over, I presume that would be okay.
Okay. Is that correct, Hunter? Okay, yes. You're correct, Buford. And normally, even though these aren't public hearings, I normally do ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak, because I do like to get the input. So even though this is not a public hearing, I know Jack Burrell is in the audience and would like to speak to this item. Jack, would you like to come up to the microphone?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. Can you hear me out there on the internet? Can you hear me? Anybody?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I'll try to talk right into the microphone. The reason I had asked Lee if I could address the commission members tonight is that this is, and it's not so much related to this one request, but it's related to that we are going to be faced with this for the next several years as people demand 5G. They're going to demand the technology. Our citizens are going to demand it, and that's the way the world's moving. But I want to caution everyone on the commission that with 5G, you know, this is just one pole, and, you know, once it's fully implemented, you're going to see requests for hundreds of poles, if not thousands of poles in the city. And so we have to be mindful of where we put them, and we don't want to set precedents. For instance, if I can address the fact that the county had requested a certain location, and I can respect that, and we need to talk to them, but at the same time, if we grant a request for, you know, every location, somebody wants an antenna outside of their office, we're going to be littered up with these poles pretty quickly, and you're going to see these all over downtown. These are going to be spaced about 150 meters apart, which is 492 feet. So if you can just picture covering the city every 492 feet, it equals, like I said, hundreds if not thousands of these small cell sites. So I want you to be mindful of that. When you get these one-off requests, certainly we want to make our county elected officials and our state elected officials happy, but I do want to urge you, and I really applaud the staff for urging a co-location of existing poles, and even if that means upgrading an existing pole to something that will accommodate this equipment. You know, that's what I am looking for on the city council. We want these to be as unobtrusive as we can possibly make them in Fairhope, because if we do not address that now, and I'm glad that our ordinance does address this, if it doesn't meet the criteria, then we don't need to allow these throughout our city, or we're going to regret it. So thank you for your time. I just wanted to make those comments to everybody. It is what the decisions we make now are going to carry forth for the next many years as we transition to 5G. And I do think that our citizens are going to want the 5G technology. You know, there's no going back. We can't stay with, you know, 4G or LTE or whatever. We can't stay with that technology. We have to move forward. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Councilman Burrell. Very good point. Now, do these, Hunter, do these always go to, do all 115211s go to the city council?
No,
Chairman, they don't. The small cell ordinance is what would send this to city council. So as Buford mentioned, we're kind of reviewing this under two criteria. The utility review will end at planning commission, small cell ordinance will go to council.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question of the committee?
Yes, sir.
So we moved this off an existing pole to place a new pole at the request of the city, and now we're being told that we should go on an existing pole. Am I to go back and redo this and go back to a pole that already exists? Is that what's being asked? Because that is actually what we would prefer.
Yeah, I think that was what the county said, that we are asking that you go back and find a pole that already exists.
In the parking lot.
Okay, because AT&T owns poles in that right of way outside of the courthouse currently, and we would just relocate on one of those poles. But we were told in the past that that's not what you wanted because it was in front of the entrance to the courthouse.
Okay.
I think what I hear staff and Councilman Burrell asking is, no, not to have it in front of the courthouse, and to put it in a place where it can be co-located with a light or whatever, and in this particular case, perhaps in the parking lot, adjoining the courthouse, which would not be as visible or obnoxious or whatever people may think of it, and doesn't sound like an unreasonable request to me.
Mr. Chairman, this is Buford. Can I address the commission once more?
Yes, sir.
And Chairman, Commissioners, that we're a bit handicapped by our current situation. Understand there are numerous other options out there, and Hunter alluded to this earlier, and it was hard to hear, so I don't know if he went into this kind of detail, but there are solutions for these types of issues where we don't take the existing light structure in the parking lot of the courthouse and hang all this equipment on it. You take the light pole down and we put up a specialized light pole that is an antenna array and a light pole, and it's custom designed and meant to be as visibly insignificant as possible. And I think that's the better solution here, or another similar solution that our friends at AT&T may have for us. We're slicing this kind of thin here. We don't mean to take all of that equipment and hang it on the side of a light pole that's not capable of holding up that kind of material. There are other solutions out there, and that may be what we need here, is one of those concurrent light pole / small cell structures, or something similar to that.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Hunter. I just got a text from Mike Jeffries. We have reviewed these in the past and did something very similar at Oak and Section, so it is possible.
Okay. All right.
It is. That was also in the right of way though. That's a little bit different than going on private property.
Art?
I mean, are we ready for a motion?
Sure.
I would, actually, what I would like to do is give AT&T the opportunity to work with staff in the county, and I would suggest that we hold this over to the next meeting.
Okay.
That's a motion.
I've got a motion to hold this over to next meeting, based upon staff being able to find a place with AT&T that's mutually beneficial. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. All right, next item on the agenda is SD 20.49, and that'll be you, Hunter, because Carla is quarantining, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Where's she in the Bahamas?
For our planning commissioners specifically, I'm going to give a little prelude to the next three cases, all minor subdivisions. And for the most part, they can meet the, one second, I got to juggle around a little bit. cases. Most of the issues we can work out, but something that keeps rearing its head is fire hydrants and public safety. And every one of these have a waiver for a fire hydrant. I have informally spoken to a lot of you, and I haven't heard one person, including some of the volunteer departments, not one person has said, yes, waive fire hydrants. That's something we need to be doing. If there's new lights, there needs to be fire protection. So we have been looking at this, and we will come in February for hopefully a better solution to these family-type subdivisions. But for now, we're recommending not offering solutions to this. So you'll see your recommendation here. Every one of these denial, we do not have a problem tabling these and allowing them to go back and get a fire flow test or an engineer's solution that we can give a waiver if we need to. But I'm going to jump into SD 2049 and kind of go through these real quick so we can see any other options that may be here. So this is Havernick Place, 2-lot minor subdivision at Rachel Myers Lane. 10.22 acres. There is something I kind of want to bring to your attention here. In front of this lot, there is a 60-foot right-of-way. There is a Rachel Myers Lane continues south, and it is a dirt road. The right-of-way ends, and it becomes a 20-foot easement.
Wait. Which one are you talking about?
Okay.
You skipped on one. You had Havernick.
We did.
I've ran it.
We did. We're trying to be too slick, so let's start at the correct one.
Keep going.
All right. Yeah, this was not a good idea, and it was my fault. So again, a 2-lot minor subdivision at the intersection of County Road 13 and 24, 11.82 acres. It is in the ETJ, did not trigger a traffic study. Water and gas provided by the city of Fairhope, Baldwin EMC for
Wait.
Power.
Back that slide up one time, please.
There you go.
Next one, Nick. Wait a minute. Where was the thing about the utilities?
Right here. Water and gas by City
Water
of
and gas.
Fairhope.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Power, Baldwin EMC, and on-site sewer telephone with AT&T. There are 2 waiver requests, a sidewalk and a fire hydrant waiver request. This is not close to any sidewalk, so staff is okay with, I think we set a kind of a precedent where we will allow an easement in lieu of installing sidewalks. But we do have a hydrant issue to deal with. As you know, our subdivisions require hydrant within 450 feet of the newly created lot. We did not receive fire flow tests that could amend that requirement per International Fire Code. We're not going to get in the business of interpreting International Fire Code. So our stance is we do not recommend a waiver on this fire hydrant and deny, but we're okay if we give the applicant some time to resolve this and come back with
Where's the
approval.
nearest fire hydrant?
It's right in front of the property.
On this
But it
one,
just doesn't serve both lots.
It'd be a little too far away from the second lot.
yes. And there is an opportunity for a fire flow test may prove that 450 feet is not needed. It's potential that
Okay,
it could be
that's not
closer.
been done.
That's right.
That was the applicant's opportunity to do that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any questions for staff at this time? All right, thank you, Hunter.
And if it's denied, the holdover period is how long before it can come back?
6 months?
I'd recommend tabling it then and
Well, I think
Or-
we don't
or
have,
holdover.
we don't have the ability to, we have to have the request because we're late in the month, aren't we?
We do have one opportunity, we do have a limit of 30 days, and it happens anyway, so
Yeah, we'd be within 30 days.
We-
That's right.
we
That's
are
late. I
within
got it
30
backwards.
days.
This is late, so we
that's
can't do it.
correct.
Okay.
Is this a public hearing? We have a public?
I haven't opened it yet. Do you want to, do you want us to go for it, Seth, or do you want us to hold this over to next month?
I believe we would like to hold it over to get that fire flow test.
Is that for the next 3 as well, and the next 2 as well? They've all got the same
Same issue.
situation.
I think it might be advisable to go ahead and let me run through them, because there's another note on this one. Simple, if you're okay with the sidewalk easement in this one, the current easement reads drainage and utility and should read sidewalk. So there's a couple of those footnotes we can go ahead and knock out. And
Do I
Well,
need
if he
to,
wants to hold it over, though, we can just terminate it right now.
Are we jumping around or are we staying on one?
we're staying on SD 20.49, Havranek.
Thank you.
Hello, yes, my name is Seth Moore. On Havranek, we have put on the plat the 15-foot sidewalk drainage and utility easement along County Road 24 and 13. So for the future, yes, we would like to be able to hold it over to get the fire flow test done and in the hands of the city.
Okay, we'll do that then. Since you're requesting, I won't ask for a motion. All right, Hunter? SD 20.50, Martineer Place.
Okay, now we're on the right one. This is also a 2-lot minor on 10.22 acres. This is the one that kind of has a strange right-of-way, but there is an easement, so water, a hydrant is not close to this one. It would require running a water line through the easement and into the right-of-way. So a simple fire flow test might not be, but I think it's still up to the applicant where they want to meet that requirement, or just ask for a waiver, but staff does not recommend that waiver.
But a fire flow test has not been done.
There's nothing to test on this location.
There's not even a line there.
Right. Correct? Is that correct?
Well, there is one, but it's like a quarter of a mile away.
Right.
But that fire flow test would tell you what your setbacks, international setbacks should be. And since we only have 2 lots and 10 acres, I think that.
Yeah. And I think the point to this is we as staff don't know International Fire Code. There needs to be an engineered stamp solution, and if it meets the International Fire Code, which the city of Fairhope has adopted, then we can, I think there's a safe opportunity to grant the waiver from the 450 feet,
Well,
if needed. It might not be.
here's where I get a burr with this, and it has to do with the requirement. You don't want to start a precedent you're not willing to carry on forever. You're not going to do one for one, you're not going to do for all, and the whole 9 yards, which we've heard that many, many times. But in an extraterritorial jurisdiction where we really don't, and we've had some of those where there is not a city water or any water for that matter, everybody's on a well, to require a landowner, in this case with 2 lots, to run a quarter mile, what is it, a 6-inch line? To run a 6-inch line, a quarter, in some instances, back in the county days, it was a half, 3/4 of a mile. I mean, that's we got to figure out a way to deal with that. And I'm not sure I know what it is. But I don't see equity in terms of small landowners that want to do a family subdivision, and we're going to require them to spend, God only knows how much money it costs to run a line a quarter or a half a mile, 6-inch line. But the thought that one landowner's going to pick up that bill, that's not right. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And I understand that sentiment completely. But I also don't recommend you give a waiver for that because the liability comes on the planning
I
commission.
understand, but we got to come up with a solution to issues like this, because this is not a square peg in a square hole, in my opinion. So, anyway, enough of that.
Mr. Chairman, can I interject very briefly?
Yes, sir.
So just to kind of support what Hunter was saying earlier, there are other solutions, and there are other fire protection solutions, but require engineer stamped drawings. So to answer Commissioner Dias's question, or just respond to Commissioner Dias, there are other solutions other than running, in this case, a 6-inch main 3,000 feet, when it might actually be more than 3,000 feet. So that whether that be a dry hydrant or some type of sprinkled system with a standpipe, and we don't need to get in the weeds on that, but there are other solutions, but it's going to require an engineered design that meets the International Fire Code.
Okay. Well, that may be something that's good to have, Buford, is a list of items, and I think a lot of us are aware of those, but to get them to the people and to get them to everybody on the planning commission, the alternatives that we need perhaps consider going forward, because it's going to be an issue. The more expensive property gets close into town, the more people are going to want to move out, and the less infrastructure is going to be available to them, and we're going to start running into this big time again. So anyway.
We'll want to mention here a couple of other things. There is a sidewalk waiver request. No sidewalks within close proximity, so staff is okay with the easement if it pleases the planning commission. And there is a lot access waiver because this is not an improved publicly maintained. And you have to forgive us. We did lose a staff member, so we were putting this together. Buford, can you check the distance on this one? I thought on the Walker, we were more than 450.
Yeah, stand by just a second, please.
Can you go back to the plans for a second?
Can we go on and
This one?
do Martin Place,
There's an
Lee?
existing hydrant too. And what's the distance on lot
He
2?
I
requested.
think you were over 450
Huh?
They were accepted.
from the new edge of the new lot.
We,
Hunter, if you can hear me, go to your previous slide. There you go.
Well, no, this is sidewalks.
looks like 492 feet to me.
Yeah, 492 is correct.
I'm sorry, Hunter, if you can show the slide that shows the red dots.
Where, that was the previous case, Buford.
I'm very sorry, Commissioners. I'm very sorry, Hunter. We've got multiple slides and multiple cases. So
It's
if
in
y'all
the
can bear
packet.
with me, I can measure that for you and answer that question.
I believe we were 492 feet, and it's in the staff packet, so it doesn't meet the
Okay.
450. And I think Buford was suggesting if there was a new hydrant right at the distance at the intersection of those two lots, both would meet. So
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, thank you, Hunter. And here's the situation. That's an 8. Jason Langley's kind of nodding his head. There's an 8-inch main on that street. So installing a fire hydrant in the vicinity of these properties solves this problem, because it stands to reason with an 8-inch main and the proximity to the water storage, it would meet any kind of flow that we could possibly conceive in that area.
And there's a potential that the fire flow is great enough that there wouldn't need to be a new.
main, you would think.
Right.
Seth, we could vote to deny this, we could hold it over, and you could do a flow test, or we could vote to approve it subject to a fire hydrant being put in there.
I think they would want to get the fire flow test to
Okay.
make sure.
All right, then we'll hold this one over as well. All right, thank you, Seth.
Just to be clear,
Lee?
Yes, sir.
Will you ask, will you make him state that he withdrawn, so we'll come back next week?
Yes, will you make a,
Sorry, sir.
Yes, we'll withdraw it and come back, have everything for the next meeting.
thank you very much, Seth, appreciate it.
Thanks, sir. Sure.
All right, next item on the agenda is SD 20.53, Magnolia Church Mixed-Use Development. Hunter?
This is actually going to be Mike Jeffries, and the next two, this and the site plan review, are similar cases. So they'll be kind of presented together.
Oh, I thought Mike was
He's virtual.
virtual. All right, you got it, Mike.
All right, good evening, everybody. So this is SD 20.53. This is the multiple occupancy project review. A concurrent review is case site plan review 20.04. And that's the site plan review where Planning Commission will make a recommendation to City Council, both for the same piece of property. So for the sake of time and not duplicating ourselves, I'm going to go over the information for these concurrently, and at the end ask you to vote on them separately as individual cases. Hang on. So a little bit of a summary of it. The property owner and applicant is Vance McCowan on behalf of Magnolia Church LLC, working with Larry Smith with SE Civil on the proposed project. So I said it's a multiple occupancy project and a site plan review. There is a total of 10 units. There's 8 residential units and 2 commercial units. And the property is located on the northeast corner of the intersection of Magnolia Avenue and Church Street. A little note here at the bottom is the total square footage for the entire building is 32,447. The residential square footage and commercial square footage are listed there, with the overall residential being 96% and the commercial percentage of the property is 4%. And in a future slide, I'll break down what the commercial is for just on the ground floor. There's our zoning map and the aerial on screen. The current property is zoned B2, and it is inside the central business district. It is across the street from other B2 property and from B3B. On the screen is a copy of the site plan review. Up is north, top of your screen. There are 6 units on the ground floor. Starting at the top left with unit 101 is a residential unit. Below it is unit 101. Unit 102 and 103 are the 2 commercial units located right on the corner. Moving around is unit 104, separated from unit 105 by an archway. Both of those residential units, you'll pass through that archway into 6 garages and a support space. The garages will support the units that correspond with the garage number that is there. There are 2 garages that front on Church Street, which will require a Board of Adjustment approval for that parking requirement based off of the Central Business District requirements. And we'll touch on that in one of the next slides as well. Some of the MOP requirements, I'm going to go over real quick that were satisfied. Drainage is collected on site and directly conveyed by pipe to the city's stormwater system. The city is currently upgrading a lot of their infrastructure along Church Street. Church Street will be redone, and this project is going to coordinate with our city project to avoid any conflicts. A traffic study was not done, but a letter was provided and documentation why the traffic study was not triggered for the subregs. On the fire flow test, the fire hydrant that's currently located on Magnolia does not provide the adequate flow, but as I mentioned, the upgrading of the systems that should provide the fire protection that is needed, and a fire flow will be done at the end of the construction to verify that there is the fire protection needed. Trash will be collected in individual cans, stored in the separate garages, and rolled out to the street on collection day. On the screen is, and it may be a little hard to see, it's a large building. The top elevation view is the view looking from Church Street. The bottom is the elevation view looking from Magnolia. On the Church Street elevation, you can see the two garages, and the building steps up as you move from the north to the south. And similarly on the Magnolia, moving east to west, the building steps up. The building height for this one is a little tricky. Most of the Central Business District property is fairly flat. There is a lot of topography change with this site and being in separate units. So if you look at the height from Magnolia as one measurement and then the height from Church Street as another measurement, we were over the height by 1.5 feet. Speaking with the developer, that is something that can be remedied. So we can take the height listed at the front elevation from each door. This is just a combination plan that was provided. It shows what is currently on site, what is going to be removed, and is also the landscape plan. Being in the CBD, there is not any green space that is required. They do show some trees that are being removed. That has been reviewed by Paul Merchant a few years ago. We do have some conflicting documents as far as the site plan, a letter from their horticulturalist, as well as the tree protection plan. I want to point out that the 33-inch live oak at the bottom of your screen on the east side, that tree was destroyed by Hurricane Sally. The parking along Church Street, as I mentioned, will require Board of Adjustment approval. We had a previous approval in November in 2018. It had a slightly different site plan, but it has expired. It was not acted upon within 365 days. The building height was not real clear. They were using the elevation along Magnolia to be the base level for the entire structure. As I mentioned, there was conflicting information between the site plan, the tree removal permit, and the letter from the arborist. The site plan presented doesn't match or agree with the letter from the arborist from March 2019. We will need a current tree removal application. The one submitted was from 2017. Also wanted to mention the arborist letter that we received state that there's a 24 feet is the closest that you can get to the roots on the tree that's at the corner of Magnolia and Church. The current site plan shows the building closer than that, and one of the trees listed for removal by the other arborist is not shown on the landscape plan. The sidewalk and ADA compliance concern staff. As I mentioned, there's significant topography from the property line to the back of the curve, more specifically along the Church Street side. So staff has requested additional drawings to show how the ADA compliance and the 8-foot sidewalks required by the CBD will be accomplished. Part of the sidewalks is the last thing staff wants to see is the site plan get approved, the building get built, and then find out that there's not enough room to meet ADA compliance without retaining walls that are in the right of way, extra steps, or that there's just simply not enough room to provide for that ADA compliance. On the screen is a little graphic showing the garages that are along Church Street. We're concerned with the cars backing into the right of way, right onto the sidewalk. And just with a simple graphic, you can see as the car was to back out before they were halfway out of their garage, they're already into the sidewalk. That was one concern that we had with the garages being right on with the building being right on the property line. I said earlier, getting back to the commercial space, there's currently 1,276 square feet of commercial space located in Unit 101, 102, and 103, and using just the numbers for the ground floor units, that is 9% of commercial space. 9% of the total ground floor will be commercial, leaving 91% for residential. Staff's recommendation for both cases is that it be tabled for further review and discussion. As I said, there were conflicting paperwork that we received was submitted for the landscaping and the horticulturalist, concerns with the traffic and the building height. And rather than hold this off the agenda, we wanted to present this for Planning Commission to also be able to get feedback on anything that they may have seen during this review. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer that on behalf of staff. And I believe we have Vance McCowan and Larry Smith with us tonight for the applicant.
Thank you very much, Mike. Are there any questions for staff at this time? Vance, would you like to make a presentation at this time? Would you like to hold this over to the next meeting? What is your pleasure?
Hey, can you all hear me? This is Vance.
Yes, sir. We can hear you fine. Yes, sir.
And can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We can hear you.
Thank you. And I appreciate what Mike has presented, and I think he'll let you or tell you or let you know that he and I had a long discussion on Thursday, and on Friday I responded to each of those items, and I think because of staff limitations, and Hunter and I spoke about it today, I'm confident we've responded appropriately to each of those items. The arborist has updated his letter or dated his letter currently, knowing that 2 trees have been removed. And for that item, I do think it might be important to speak about that. In the letter specifically said 24 feet unless you support the building on some helical pile structure to allow the existing grade to remain undisturbed within 24 feet. So I helped him clarify his description of that. So there's a new letter, there's a new application. There's also some reviewing data on how to transition from the slope of 6% down Magnolia into each of the residential doors. So we've responded to all of that, and I think rather than trying to explain it here, it'd be better to allow you all, if you would please, to table it and then let the staff have a chance to visit all of the information that we've resubmitted on Friday.
Thank you very much, Vance. Does anybody have any comments
Hunter does.
at this time? Hunter Vance Hunter has some comments he'd like to make.
Yes, and I just want something valuable for Vance to look at, because there were 2 things that, we had concerns of that could potentially change the design of his project. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Mike, can you go back 3 spots? Yep. And I just want to be clear, because this first went to Board of Adjustment, and it was a different site plan, but does anyone have any problems with this situation?
I do.
I do too.
I was going to say, Vance, my concerns on the plan is drawn. I've got 2 concerns. One is the backing out onto Church Street and having the garages face on Church Street. And the other is, this is mixed use. I would like to see, in a perfect world, a little bit more commercial on at least Magnolia. The comprehensive plan calls to really protect the central business district, and right now I understand that, residential is very hot in downtown Fairhope, and that, with COVID, business is kind of a little bit slow, and, we've had a lot of new commercial buildings open, and the absorption hasn't quite caught up with maybe all of the new commercial buildings. But I'd love to see a little bit more commercial on the ground floor, maybe facing, Magnolia, and also those garages backing out onto Church Street like that really concern me, because with the property right on, on the line, the tail of the car will be out of the sidewalk before somebody has vision of the sidewalk.
Is that an opportunity to respond?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
May I respond?
Yes, sir, Vance, I'm sorry, I thought you could hear me. Absolutely, go ahead.
We submitted this to the Board of Adjustments. Time goes by too fast, but we actually had 3 garages requested. If you notice across the street on Church Street, it's all residential, and everybody on Church Street backs in some of which back into the street. But I would agree if there was going to be a high traffic of pedestrian use, and I think that with technology of cameras and all that's available on new cars, this is not going to be, I would have to disagree that there's not if you back out of, if I take the development we did on Section Place in Pine Street, and you have 6 parking spaces backing in the same right-of-way on the street, it's no different from any other parking in the city where you back across the sidewalk. So I don't know that it's any different, frankly.
I don't think any of those are coming out of the garage directly onto a sidewalk, are they? Vance, I don't know if any of those are coming directly out of a garage right on top of a sidewalk, are they?
Well, I could probably find 1 or 2, but what I'm saying is, well, I guess what I'm stating, is there a difference between a driveway and a garage with mirrors and cameras? I don't know that there's not a blind spot, let me put it that way.
I don't know that. And I haven't seen many, and I'm surprised that the Board of Adjustments would give a waiver, because usually for a waiver to be given, you've got to have a hardship, and I didn't know you could have a hardship on a new construction of a vacant lot.
Let me give you a quick description of that. The hardship is that the ordinance says that they should be screened and in the rear. And the topography of this property did not allow us to be able to access this space on Church Street so grading and drainage was the reason for the hardship.
And Mr. Chairman, you understand that. I know you do. I'll say it for the public. A variance doesn't carry with it a site plan, so it's just a variance to that. It's the Planning Commission's job to judge this site plan and whether this is appropriate or not.
Well, I'm sure that's the case or true. Site plan was the emphasis behind the hardship. So the only difference was we had 3 townhouse developments on Church Street at the time of the application. We've now converted that to 2.
And I believe there was correct me if I'm wrong on the number, the building wasn't as large and there was 20 parking spaces that were going to be made available to the public.
And those are now covered garage. If you count the parking spaces in the garages, all we did was cover the parking space. If you open up that site plan, you'll see garage 200, 201, 202, and you have the other ones on the other side. We have the same parking spaces. We just covered them.
Commissioners, any other commissioners want to get feedback? Vance has already requested that we hold this over to the next meeting, which I'm going to have to make sure I skip the next meeting. It's going to be a long one. But do any other commissioners have any input for Vance McCown while he is here?
No, it just seems to me that he's heard some concerns, and so it's going to be up to him to make a decision on what he wants to do when he comes back to us.
All right, thank you very much. Vance, we'll see you at the next meeting.
Great, thank you very much.
We make it clear.
For both, hey, Vance, and that's for both cases, correct?
That's right, site plan approval and MOP.
Thank you, sir, appreciate it. Have a good
Thank
evening. All right, next item on the agenda, if I am up to speed, is
Joe, can you get me back to the, I'm sorry,
ZC
Mr. Chairman.
20.09, Reserve at Fairhope. This is a planned unit development, is it not?
It is.
This is a planned unit development, so for anybody in the audience or who's watching on the computer, I know I've had 1 or 2 people call me about this. A planned unit development is actually a zoning. It's kind of one area where contract zoning, which is illegal, is somewhat legal, that they show a plan and say, this is what we're going to do, and we're able to approve or deny it based upon that plan. And I'm looking at our attorney, Chris, to make sure he doesn't say anything rude to me while I say that. And here, we as the Planning and Zoning Commission, since this is a zoning, it becomes an ordinance. So we don't have the authority for an ordinance, so we simply make a recommendation to City Council, which we have 2 City Council members in here, one sitting on our board tonight and one in the audience, and they will ultimately be 2 of the 5 votes to decide whether or not this is done. We'll simply make a recommendation. And so sometimes Jimmy Conyers is our councilman who rotates through on the planning and zoning. He may vote on this tonight, or he may abstain, because sometimes the councilmen, feel very comfortable voting one way or the other. Sometimes they'd rather wait until it comes up in front of City Council to vote. So anyway, we will simply have a public hearing, listen, ask whatever questions, and then we will make a recommendation to the City Council, and it will come up to them at a later date. So anyway, with that said, Hunter, if you'll go ahead.
Thank you. So this is the Reserve at Fairhope, located at the southwest intersection of Greeno Road and Volanta Avenue. It currently is two lots. There is a single-family home on the southernmost lot. The other lot is currently undeveloped. The complete project is 168 total units. This is, I forget the applicant's name for it. This is for elderly, portion of our community, their name, the senior living facility.
People like art.
That's right.
Yeah. It's not the same people that own Dominion.
It's not padded enough for that. It does consist of 104 independent living units, 32 assisted living units, and 32 memory care units. All of that on 16 acres. The site density is about 12.6 units per acre. I'm going to flip back real quick. This is not broken into phases. It's all intended to be built at once, but because the site plan is so large, I've kind of broken it into a couple of phases. This is my breakdown. The southern portion of the project comprises 20 independent living units, has patio homes, as well as most of the outdoor amenities. At least 26% green space is provided, and I say at least 26% because, and Trey can correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe the 20-foot buffer along Greeno and Volanta was not included in the green space calculations, but he can confirm or deny. But the requirement is 25%, and without the green space buffers, it's 26%. The proposed stormwater areas, management areas are in general, so that will be handled in detail at the this will trigger an MOP review, so if approved, it will be reviewed in greater detail there. I believe there's room for more meandering shape and natural shape with more opportunities for landscape, but again, I'll let the engineer speak to that. Amenities in this section include golf cart parking, outdoor pool, putting greens, walking trails, sidewalks, and a variety of greens. The internal sidewalks and walkways are connected to the city trails and sidewalks. And on the southernmost site to the right of this image is Hoyle Avenue. It is currently an unimproved right-of-way. They will be using that and coordinate with Public Works to improve Hoyle Avenue as a secondary entrance. On the northern half of the site is where the larger proposed building is. It's 3 stories. This is where 32 assisted living units, and we do have a plan coming up of the building, or a floor plan. 32 assisted living units, 32 memory care units, and 84 independent care units. Library, cafe, 3 dining halls, and administrative offices. On the outside, we have some courtyards, greens provided along with the screened service areas. Again, walkways and sidewalks connect throughout the site. The bottom left wing is 3 stories of assisted living. Bottom right, ground floor is memory care with 1 story above that of offices and storage. Pool on this side, but the top 2 wings, are the second and third story, are independent care units. Architectural details provided for the south elevation show the materials and the palette We'll note on here on the bottom, building height that comes up, this is a PUD, this does not create a precedent, so they have requested a maximum eve height of 34 feet. As you see to the top of the building, this is 45 feet. A large building like this, we do want to note that in most of the locations, this is 180 feet off of Greeno Road with 20-foot landscape buffer, detention areas with more landscape, a screened parking lot. So scale-wise from Greeno, this is not a 45-foot building looming. I do think we need to look at the other building elevations during MOP review. So staff requests that as a condition of approval that we see those other elevations. Little concerned, maybe a step down on closer to Volanta may be warranted, but we don't know that without an elevation.
Is the 40-foot height limit only applicable to the CBD?
That's correct.
Okay.
And what we have in a PUD, Councilman, is an opportunity for negotiation. Mm-hmm. So what we worry about is a precedent, and every PUD is unique. So is it warranted by the 180 feet off the road and the landscape provided? That's the judge. So but yes, the 40 feet for mixed use is in the CBD. Do want to bring this up, as we've wrote in our staff report, the elderly population of our community being located here by the social infrastructure of Volanta Park, the rec center, is exciting for a planner. It's a good marriage. We were a little concerned with the additional pedestrian crossing on Volanta Avenue. There is an existing pedestrian crosswalk. It's unsignaled, it doesn't have a signal, and the applicant, in relation, the plan on the left, you can see the extent of their site, and where this crosswalk is to the west, a decent amount. They've agreed to add a pedestrian crosswalk signal to that location. The lighting plan is included in the master development plan. There's quite a few sheets there, but this one easy to see. There's no light pollution on adjacent properties. 0-foot candle is what's shown on the plans. There are landscape plans. Those might change a little bit as drainage comes into play. But would like, because of the location here, I would like for the tree commission to review those plans. We did that with another one recently, so we can coordinate, staff can coordinate that either prior to or during the MOP review with the tree commission. Let me touch on one thing because there was a letter and I want to address it. As you can see, there was a wetland delineation report. There was some evidence of hydric soils on a soil map. The test said there was no moisture in any of those, from my understanding. And I didn't grow up near Grady ponds, but what I understand, in the 50s there was a Grady pond that was drained, so that's where that soil was coming from. But nothing found present right now.
Cultivated field once upon a time.
Right. So
there's some great popcorn trees on it.
That's right. So we recommend approval of this PUD. We would like, and I'm going to use one of Buford's words because it just works. I'm going to memorialize a couple of things that are just already a part of the process. But tree removal and landscape plans shall be reviewed by the City of Fairhope Tree Commission prior to or during the MOP review. The proposed signalized crossing shall be coordinated with the City of Fairhope's Public Works Department. Final drainage plans as well as connectivity to sewer and electrical will be resolved prior to or during the MOP review. And a traffic study and building elevations would be provided for review as part of the MOP application.
Thank you very much, Hunter. Does anybody have a question for our staff at this time? If not, I see Trey Jenwright in the audience. Trey, would you like to come up and make a presentation?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm Trey Jenwright, J Consulting here in town. Thank y'all for taking a moment to look at our project. This is a senior community development. We've been working with Hunter and the staff for probably a year now, Hunter, working through the different concerns and ideas and trying to bring in feedback with the project moving forward. I wanted to touch base on a few items that were discussed or Hunter brought up during his presentation. A neat thing about this project is the Dominion Partners has many of these across the country, and a large portion of their population is 70 to 80% of those are from within a 5-mile radius of the development. So this is a facility, as they see it, for our community, for our town. And so these are not new residents, but predominantly people that are here now looking for a place to move to. So it's a service that they see as needed and a service that they're looking to provide. The buildings are a combination of 2- and 3-story structures in the main facility with a more single-family type footprint on the southern end. Those are duplex structures or single-story structures. The main structure has a 3-story component that is focused on the corner of the road, which would be the northeast quadrant of the property, near Volanta and 181. I'm sorry, not 98. I've got another project in my mind. 98. The 2-story structure is in the southwest corner of the facility, and that's closest to the existing neighborhood there. And so the existing neighborhood would be close to a 2-story structure, and that falls into our more general building heights that we see in the area. The project is providing a significant buffer along that western edge next to the community, the existing neighborhood there. And Hunter is correct. When we ran our open space calculations, we based them on the criteria that's set forth in the city's design standards based on a certain design criteria that the city requires to be counted as open space and to get to that 25%. And we've actually got 26%. If you actually counted green space, buffers and things of those natures, we're well over that number. And so we exceed the green space requirement considerably in this project. I have read the reviews of the contingency items. I agree with those 4 items. I think they're fair. City has a very strong set of drainage calculations and requirements that were required to move forward. The city, if the city so chooses to allow this to move forward, then that will go through the MOP process, and it'll be back before you again, and you'll be able to look at the more detailed criteria in fire flows, sewer capacity, sewer analysis, how are we making those connections, electrical plans, and of course storm drainage. And so we feel comfortable that we can make those improvements and meet your design criteria. I'm very familiar with the Volanta watershed. I did a project for the city many years ago. And I know what's there, and feel comfortable we can make this one work. So,
Good. Can we talk about your drainage?
Yes, sir.
I'm looking like, it's hard to, I'm assuming what these lines represent on the first sheet that is provided, those are your topo lines, I'm assuming, is that right?
The broken lines are topo lines. Yes,
okay, and it's difficult because it's a busy piece. It's hard for me to determine which way. Which way does your drainage flow predominantly on this side?
It flows to the south toward, was it Hoyle Avenue?
It does?
Yes,
and
sir.
then it goes to the bay from, what, down one of the gullies?
It flows through Mr. Green's
So
property.
it does not go to the 4-lane and then to Fly Creek?
The floor lane flows toward Hoyle Avenue and then goes towards Volanta watershed.
Yeah. Fly Creek took a hit when they built that 4-lane big time in terms of destruction of that natural system. Mm-hmm. And it's always been, I used to live there, and it's always been a concern of mine that anything that's done on that 4-lane, but if it goes the other direction, into my comments.
It's still a concern for the community, and we're going to make sure it's addressed. But it does go to the south.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Any more questions for the developer while he's up?
And I have, the developer is here if you want to ask her or discuss any kind of criteria with the operation of the facility or if anything that comes up. We're here to talk to you. So thank you.
Does he have anything he'd like to add?
Did I understand correctly, sorry, that this is sort of a placeholder for the stormwater, but the stormwater hasn't been calculated?
That is
Stormwater
correct.
management areas?
That's correct.
Okay.
It will be,
Yeah.
it's a placeholder for it. It'll be calculated during the MOP review.
Yeah, that will come back at the MOP, Rebecca.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Troy, would you like to say anything at this time? Okay, the developer and the engineer are both here if anybody has any questions for them. I will go ahead at this point and open up the public hearing. I believe we have one person that mentioned to me that they'd like to ask some questions, who is watching this on the computer. And so I'll go ahead and just open the public hearing at this time.
Mr. Chairman, we did also receive a letter that was included in your packet.
Okay. All right, does anybody from the public wish to speak to this item?
Yes, I do. My name is Lawana Maidstone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. I live at 512 Lillian Circle, and the back of my property will be, it bumps right up to Hoyle Avenue. And I mean, this is very difficult to see this drawing, but I'm really not seeing much of a buffer to the back of my property. Could you address that and maybe kind of clarify? Because I can see where the other property owners on the other side, I can see the buffer on the drawing, but I'm just not seeing a lot of a buffer. This is the whole back of my house, the whole back of my property.
I will ask, when I close the public hearing, I will ask the engineer to discuss the buffer and the height behind your property. Trey, do you see where that is now? If you look at on this front page right here, it's the little pie-shaped lot right on, it comes up to the southwest corner of your property. Okay. All right. Lillian, do you have any questions besides that?
I am a little bit concerned about the drainage because the drainage will be going towards, the back of my property also. We back up to Green's Nursery, and part of my property kind of goes, there's like a little triangle that goes across Hoyle Avenue. So I do have some questions about that.
Okay. They don't have an actual drainage plan at this time. They do have some ideas, of the flow and that it will work. But that will come back when they have their multiple occupancy plan. But I will get Trey to go into a little bit more depth on that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Green, I see you in the audience. Do you?
Good evening, everyone.
And you're the only person that doesn't have to say your address because Emily knows it.
I missed the last couple of meetings. Well, since there's no drainage calculations tonight as of yet, I don't think I could speak real specifically to that, but the overarching issue, it would go back to the wetlands delineation on this project. At one time, there was definitely wetlands on this 16 acres. There was a grady pond. The water did not escape the grady pond. There was grady vegetation on that site. There were swamp tupelo, cottonwood trees. The water did not drain from this site. Now, as I understand it, the hydric soils may not be indicated now, but the profile would show that historically they are on that site. To be clear, we don't have any beef at all with the project. Sounds like a good project, great project. Maybe the density's a little heavy and the proximity close to Greeno Road with the noise might be an issue to the residents, but that's not up to us. But as Hunter said previously, all these PUDs are a matter of negotiation with your developers. And what we would like to see, given the fact that Historically, yes, there was less water leaving this site in the 1950s, 1960s than there is now. It would maybe behoove the city of Fairhope to think of a negotiation which would include retaining even more of that water on the site in these stormwater calculations than what might be normally required for a development. And to Art's comment, yeah, it doesn't drain to Fly Creek, but it drains into our backyard. I don't know how many of y'all maybe opened that PowerPoint that we sent, but it's rather dramatic. Volanta watershed kind of flies under the radar in the erosion issues in Fairhope, but it is, I promise you, from having trekked most of the gullies in Fairhope, it is the largest single most erodible watershed in Fairhope. And Trey did some great work toward trying to mitigate that, but most of his recommendations were not followed through by the city of Fairhope at that time.
This is the one that goes through by the development Mac Walcott is doing. Isn't that correct?
I'm sorry.
Doesn't this go by the development
Yes.
Mac Walcott's doing down by the pump station
It
and right
does.
through there?
It affects over 200 homeowners and businesses between that one point and the Fairhope Yacht Club on Volanta Avenue. The water that enters that watershed flows from Greeno Road at Edwards Avenue and from Volanta Avenue all down Aldot's western right-of-way of Greeno Road, and then enters our property down Hoyle Street, all to one point directly behind our home, and the erosion is incredible. It has not yet reached Miss Maidstone's, but it could. And as Lee, you and Art know, through the years, you'll see all kinds of drainage information from various developers, and then there'll be some old coot that gets up here and says, well, I know that the water flows here and it floods over here and such, and oftentimes they're right, you know, after the fact. Well, tonight, I'm that old coot, okay? Been around a while. The only other issue, and I only thought of it a couple hours ago when I saw some of these drawings, was Hoyle Street is a 60-foot right-of-way. It's a very wide right-of-way for a small street that's not a major artery. It's a very wide right-of-way, I should say. And the driveway that's on it now kind of meanders through it. But the southern portion of the right-of-way is very heavily landscaped, full of mature pines and cedars and all kinds of things. It's heavily, heavily landscaped. It's a nice buffer. And if this improvement to the pavement goes through, I would hope that it could be placed within the wide and open area tray that it's in place now that would preserve all of those trees. That could easily be done. The other thing...
When I drove in there, the opening where the driveway is, that's to the, are you saying that that's to the north of the right-of-way?
The right-of-way, it's within the right-of-way.
But is it on the, kind of, on the north portion?
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah. And the utilities that run down to that single-family home are probably slightly off the right-of-way as it is now, from the looks of it. It surprisingly does not line up with Dyer Avenue to the east. It's a little bit south of all of that. The one thing about the pavement of that, I would say quite selfishly, and I believe this would be the case, we don't have any interest in being assessed for the pavement of that street. It is of no benefit to us having it paved, but I suppose that would be on the developer of the PUD exclusively. Would that be the case, huh?
That is the case, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Would anybody else wish to speak to this item? All right, in that case, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Trey, you heard, if you could speak a little bit more about the buffer on that corner, and also, I know you don't have your drainage plan yet, but just kind of let us know kind of what your off-the-cuff thoughts are of how the drainage will work on this.
So the parcel that the lady spoke of, that there's a 0.19 acre tract there that's kind of outside of our development. The driveway that comes down Whole Avenue, that takes a bend to the south, and it goes into that neighborhood, it crosses over this triangle piece. But we're not in that project. And so to answer Mr. Green's comment and the lady's comment online, that what you see there now will be there when we're doing, or actually it will be replanted if anything. That's not our parcel, and we're not going to do it there. So that's probably 30 or 40 feet wide, and that's going to remain that condition today, and it will be that way tomorrow. So if anything, it's going to get thicker in there, quite honestly.
Buildings 11 and 12, how tall are those?
11, those are just a single-story duplex facility.
Okay.
So they're a single-story house.
And do you know about what that setback is off the back of those before the property line?
I believe that's probably 30 feet.
So they'd have 30 feet, and then they'd have the 60-foot right-of-way, so the building would be about 90 feet from the back of their property. Is that correct?
Well, you've got where the whole avenue kind of stops there, and it's 60 foot wide. There's a triangle piece that's created on this 0.19 acres, and that piece is where the driveway, the existing driveway now kind of bends and goes into that single-family home. That triangle piece is not part of our project, and so that piece starts at 60 feet and kind of tapers down, and we're staying out of that completely. And so the vegetation that they have there now will only enhance when we pull out of there, because we're not going to do any work in that location. It's not our property.
You're talking about the southwest corner of what you've got outlined?
The very most southwest corner,
Right,
correct.
I see it, yeah.
Okay. That was my only concern, was there going to be a 45-foot house backed right on top of a current residential house in a R1, but it doesn't.
No, there's an existing culvert under Whole Avenue now, and if you go out there, you'll notice it. And our driveway right now is kind of located where that culvert location is, and so we're not going any further to the west than that. We're staying away from that corner, which would provide additional buffer to the lady online and to what Mr. Green was commenting to.
All right, commissioners, do you have any questions? Trey is up at the podium right now. Do you have any questions for Trey at this point?
This is Harry Kohler. One quick question. I don't see any parking provided for any of the duplex units. Is that the plan, that folks living there would not have access to cars, or is there parking somewhere else for those folks?
No, sir. These units have a garage, and they also have a space that's in front of the building, and so there's a 20-foot parking space between the sidewalk that we have indicated and the garage door, and so there's adequate space to park 2 vehicles per unit.
Okay, yeah, I see it now. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Harry. Any other questions at this time?
And I would add a note that, that's a good question. Also, these structures have a golf cart parking space as well, and so we anticipate those folks having golf carts, and they have a golf cart facility as well as typical vehicle parking.
And they can walk across the street and go to the skateboard park, too.
I want to be there when it happens. Or maybe I don't want to be there.
Is that Holly? Do you have any questions, Holly?
No, I'm excited to see this, and excited to see them in the skateboard park.
I thought I heard you starting to say something. Excuse me.
No, I was giggling. I think it looks great.
I think that was me. Sorry, this is Rebecca.
Yes, ma'am.
I like the concept of this development, but it makes me realize with the location and the fact that this land used to previously retain stormwater, even more the need we have for a more comprehensive approach to stormwater. That's not just about rate, but it's about quantity, and that looks at the overall impact on our watersheds. Because I don't know that we have any. Well, I guess here would be a question to our legal counsel. I don't know that we have any tools to. I don't know that we can punish a current landowner for the removal of wetlands by a previous landowner. And I don't know what tools we might have to exceed the minimum legal stormwater requirements. But I hear the concerns and I see a need.
Well, that's a good point, Rebecca. And I don't know how protected Grady ponds are. I know, I was talking to Eric Cortines. He got about 1,000 phone calls when that pond on County Road 13 was filled. And it was just a Grady pond, and they said it wasn't protected by the wetlands ordinance, which surprised me because it certainly seemed like it was a good water retention.
I believe I can explain that to you.
Yes, sir.
Grady ponds are not regulated by the Corps of Engineers nor any other government entity. They're not any wetland that is not attached to other wetlands, i.e. a Grady pond, which sits pretty much out by itself, is not regulated.
I see.
But beyond, without getting into the weeds on how they're regulated, they still serve a function and they still retain stormwater. So, when you lose that, and that capacity was lost previously, but now we're adding on to the lost capacity, we're adding increased impervious area. And I don't have a solution in mind, actually. I'm wanted to bring it up for discussion because I feel like we're a problem in search of a solution that we really need to address more comprehensively instead of just looking at the rate of flow of our projects. We're going to have some significant cumulative impacts.
Well, that's a good point, Rebecca, and I suggest you read the wetlands ordinance and any changes that you have to make, we can certainly take to the city council, because that's one thing that I've always noticed is when when you on an individual property say that you're not increasing the flow, but you're keeping the flow the same for a longer amount of time, the cumulative effect of that can certainly increase the flow downstream. So that's certainly something to look at. Trey had, I think, some comments he wanted to make. Trey Jenright?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's my concern, just to be clear, rather than the wetlands ordinance. It's the cumulative stormwater impact.
I was just wanting to point out, the city has a unique tool already in their ordinance. Your stormwater regulations require downstream analysis. So it kind of throws out the pre versus post conversation. Yeah, that's in there, but that's not the only requirement that you have. And so if it's enforced correctly, and it's our full intent to comply with that 100%, you're looking at what the downstream can handle, not necessarily what it's doing today. And so that takes into account historical activity on that channel. And so I hear you loud and clear. I think your concern is weighted, but I think the city already has tools in place that they can handle this thing appropriately.
When did you, I heard mention a little while ago that you had done some work on stormwater for the city some time ago?
We did a study on this very watershed, 10 or 15 years ago.
And what happened with it?
Well, it's Mr. Green pointed out some things. It's a very erodible watershed, not to get into the weeds on it, but it's a combination of sands and clays that are layered. And so as soon as the head cuts happen and cuts through the clay layer, it's a sand in it. You've got a lot of sloughing in there. And so
did you have recommendations?
We placed several recommendations through there, and some of them were implemented and some of them wasn't. And so it was kind of it's a money thing.
Well, we all understand that volume and velocity of water dictate the volume of material that's going to be moved. And if you can pour clean water from that's one of the big arguments or debates that continues to go on. And you've got a dam with a lake, and all of your sediment, when the water hits the lake, all your sediment drops out because the velocity changes radically. Then when you release it through an overflow pipe or even a weir, what you've got, or what they term is hungry, I'm telling you, but you know this just like I know it, it's hungry water. And nature's all about an equilibrium, and it's going to pick up the amount of sediment. So when it gets into these gullies, as water or volume and velocity, it's going to pick up a certain amount. Where's it going to get it? It's going to cut it off the bank, going to cut it off the bottom of the channel, or it's going to erode it back. And I'd be do you have that study?
It's on the city's website.
Yeah.
It's on where?
The city's website.
It is?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good, thank you.
It was a neat study, and it's where, if you know, over by the liquor store and, you know, the Winn-Dixie Shopping Center, that retention pond was redone as part of that study, and there were suggestions that...
The one on the south side of the liquor store there? Yeah.
And there were suggestions that, you know, in shopping centers, rather than have raised planters, to lower the planters, and just so every planter would be a water retention. I had some really neat ideas in there, and it's like Trey said, it's all just cost and how much do you want to bite off, and you know, what kind of funding can
Well, we're
you
10 or
get.
15 years down the road now again too, and things changed.
We did a few of the projects. We did some stuff up at Atlanta Ball Fields. We did some stuff just north of Patland Avenue, or Patland Drive down there. The city had some parkland that we could do, the biggest bang for the buck, if you would, in those locations. So we went there and implemented some things.
Commissioners, back to the reserve at Fairhope. Any more questions for the engineer? If not, I'll accept a motion.
Motion, Mr. Chairman. Case number ZC 20.09, the reserve at Fairhope. I move that we recommend to the city council approval.
I have a motion to recommend city council approval.
Subject to staff recommendations.
Subject to the staff recommendations. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
That was Harry Kohler with the second.
That's correct, yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, ZC 2010 Clump Pud.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Get us to the start of the next slides.
You're having a hard time tonight, aren't you?
You know, I could just
Did he
smooth
turkey at too much cranberry sauce at Thanksgiving, and he lost his capability of manipulating equipment?
I don't think anybody noticed if you didn't call me out on every small error, but we'll get started here.
If he would have just let me run the slides.
I'll get my 23-year-old son, one of my 23-year-old sons, to come in next meeting and take care of it for you.
That'd be great. We could use the help. Okay, CZ 20.10, the Clump PUD Amendment. Just a little quick history. This is a PUD that was approved, made it through City Council, and back for an amendment, a proposed amendment. This is located at the corner of Fairhope Avenue, 181, and Gayfer Extension to the north. I'm going to kind of move through. It is a 75.93. I'll hit some highlights. We'll have a lot of words here we can refer to if needed. I'm going to move a little quicker, but you make me backtrack if we need to. This is the originally presented conceptual site plan was not included in the PUD ordinance, but we show this how we started. The drawing was here, and this basically consisted of R5 apartments in the center of the site. Along the roads was B2 underlying zoning, and then something close to R3 single-family residential abutting the property to the west. By the time it made it through Planning Commission and Council, there was some minor amendments. If you'll notice, to the south, the R3 type housing was moved to Gayfer Extension so that there was commercial all along Fairhope Avenue. And we'll kind of flip through here. The proposed amendment is like presented here. Unit 2 is 41 acres. And as proposed tonight was R5 density. Unit 3 is R5, although they have stipulated that would be used for convalescence, assisted living, or memory care. And then Unit 1 composes 13 B2 lots. There was a plan provided, originally said not to be included. There was comments that said they would be happy to limit to this site plan 233 duplex triplexes on the 41 acres. It does have a clubhouse, pool amenity presented here. And I'm going to kind of, we've got the language here, but I've got a chart so we can just look at this for a comparison. So an existing Unit 1 is B2 with 28.79 acres, 16 lots. Proposed B2 reduces that to 19 acres, 13 lots. Existing Unit 2, R5 apartments were proposed, 23.2 acres at 10 units per acre, equated to 232 units. Proposed that same space is R5, 41 acres, 10 units per acre, with 410 units possible. And existing 3 is approximately R3 zoning, 14.11 acres at approximately 4.75 units per acre for 67. And the new proposed Unit 3 is, like I said, it's restricted to convalescent nursing or assisted living, but R5 density at 10.63 units, 10.6 acres at 10 units per acre is another additional 106 units. Sorry, go ahead. Question? And I do note here that 410 units, the applicant has said they would limit that site plan to 232 units as shown approximately on the site plan. But I do want to call out some notes here because a lot of the details, what's happening and some of our concerns show up in the notes. So to start off with, there is the PUD, and this was in the original PUD as approved, but it comes up again in a little bit. I just want to highlight the PUD proposes no installation of sidewalks along 181. And sidewalks are provided on both sides of every public street. So we want to bring that up in a second. And then between Planning Commission and Council, the last two notes were put in there. The number 6 gives us extreme heartburn. The PUD document will not be affected by future revisions to the current September 2019 City of Fairhope zoning ordinance. That we do not have any requirement of anything. That means we have to keep a copy of that zoning code forever. It's an administrative nightmare for us. Anything within a PUD, if you're not comfortable with language that changes, is put it in the PUD. So heartburn there, and then other notes on the page that we might have some concern with. Minimum lots on Unit 2, are sold in the notes as R5. We believe that Unit 2 should more closely reflect R3, and that is more similar to the site plan as shown instead of R5. There was some conditions of approval as it made it to the council, and some of those notes didn't make it to here. For example, each lot in Unit 1, which is the commercial, shall have its own stormwater control and detention. One of the conditions that made it through council was a master drainage plan shall be provided for units 1, 2, and 3. And I do think we negotiate, or we were okay with that being provided at the preliminary plat stage. And then we're kind of looking at how this complies with the comprehensive plan. And I want to note that this, in our comprehensive plan, it says simply evaluating developments at these areas, which this is a village node will not result in a village. It will take a proactive effort. So related to that, this asterisk shows very clearly Fairhope Avenue and Highway 181 is contemplated as a village center. I'm going to couple of quick notes. The immediate areas around villages are to be more dense, more units per acre, and then transition to lower density development patterns. And specifically at this intersection, some notes. So evaluating, we've already have been encouraged, just evaluating each development will not result in our goal. Form, function, and design recommendations for these future developments of villages are as follows. And I just highlighted a couple of the critical ones. Where are the buildings in relation to the street? They recommend pushing as close to the street as possible. Having architectural guidelines. That can go as far as architectural themes and styles or massing, where they locate on the site. Automobile access, where are the parking lots, locations and aesthetics? How are the right-of-way improvements, turn lanes, all of the landscaping, street lighting, how do those make a comprehensively planned development? So, as we looked at this, there's 3 pages, and we've seen landscape plans, we've seen other things, but this is a very simple site plan that doesn't address some of those things. So we want to provide some feedback. Just to skip ahead, you'll see the last slide, our recommendation is denial. In theory, we do not have a problem with this concept instead of high-rise 3-story apartments. But we'd like to see a little bit more information showing how this is comprehensively planned, and we'd like as staff to provide a little bit of options here. And then we'd like to hear from the Planning Commission. So first, there was 2 conditions that were approved that didn't make it to this. There's the drainages we've already spoke of, and then a 10-foot wide landscape buffer that is compatible with our tree ordinance was required in between Unit 3 and the adjacent property. That was not shown. There is a 30-foot buffer, but it doesn't reflect the requirements of the tree ordinance. So is that just a 20-foot or 30-foot wide open strip? And what we had then was an R3 density. So you had a 30-foot rear setback and then the additional 10-foot buffer. Where as the plans show right now, there's no details on what that included in that buffer. So it's some simple language that could be added. If we refer back to the notes on the sidewalks, the roads in Unit 2 and 3, which are along Gayfer and the 41 acres showing the duplexes and triplexes, those are private roads. The note I was worried a little bit about said sidewalks are only installed on either side of public roads. So what I've done very crudely is show the public roads and the sidewalks that would be installed. And there's some strangeness to here, especially when they're considering sidewalks are not installed on 181. You have some strange just dead ends of sidewalks going out to the right of way. So and then there is no sidewalk shown at all on the site plan here in Unit 2. Obviously, Unit 3 has not been developed, but there can be some guidelines that would ensure those are connected to the rest of the site. The perimeter of the property, per the comp plan, is very important. So how does the massing and the architectural details, that could be pretty simple. I don't want to design for, but we have green space buffers that are required to provide a street front. They're already written and the details are provided in the tree ordinance. They could refer to that along the front so that we don't have to have this conversation, over and over and over again as we review every one of these lots. Because what the applicant has done is agreed to having site plan approval for each of these individual lots. But we'd like to see something that ties them all together. And, that can be build 2 lines, buffers, locations of parking. You could simply say parking shall be in the side of the rear. But again, that's just suggestions. There's a thousand of options that the applicant can come up with. As we talked about the buffer and transition, what we do like about the previous plan was the transition. And what we're seeing here is I'm a little worried about what happens along this western edge. You know, there is a 30-foot buffer, but like we talked about, there's no requirement for what that looks like. So as you can see, some of these triplexes and duplexes, but right against that 30-foot buffer, and then is it just an open field until the property line? You know, you walk out the back door and you're in that buffer. So what happens in that space? We'd just like to see what it is, and judge the plan in and of itself, and not have to fight to at least get a site plan, and a rudimentary site plan at that. So we'd like to see the landscape plan. We'd like to be a commitment for what is being proposed, and something that we can actually get behind. So for that reason, we don't think there's enough information here to justify support for this from a staff level. Like to hear any comments or questions you may have, and we'll be happy to address those.
Thank you, Hunter. Are there any questions for Hunter at this time? If not, Scott Hutchison, are you with us tonight? Is there anybody on behalf of Clump Pud developer or
Scott may be trying to speak. I can see his name at the bottom of the screen.
So I have his number.
Mute keeps coming on and off.
Can you see it? Look back.
Do you have his number, Emily, by any chance?
He is not muted on our end.
Can you hear me now?
Hey, is that you, Scott?
Yes. Are you good? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you, Scott. Go ahead.
I'm very sorry. Hold it. Bear with me real quick. For some reason, my computer mic wasn't working. I had to call in on my phone. So
We can hear you.
let me get where I can hear.
Yes, we can. We can hear you very
This
easily.
is fun doing it this way. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I could have come down there. I would have done that. Did everybody hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine, Scott.
Okay, well, I appreciate Hunter's presentation and his input. We submitted this very similar to the last time, and none of the comments that Hunter's mentioned do we really have any problem with. You know, I really wish we had a chance to address those during the review and comment letter period. We really could have addressed them and probably been in a position where you guys could see that we addressed the comments that he brought up. And he did point out that the 410 is not 410. We're committing to leaving it at 233 on the multifamily. I will say it's important to note, Hunter brought up a little heartburn with the removal of the single family that we had along the western property. We did take that out. However, what we're committing to is a different product for the multifamily. What was approved before and what was proposed was the 3-story, typical apartment type buildings, and what we're committing to are the smaller duplex and triplex units. the same product you see down at Old Battles Place, which is, from all practical purposes, you ride through it, looks just like a regular subdivision, and with homes. So it's a much different product. So it really does still provide that transition from higher density to lower density. And in addition to that, there's the existing single family that runs along our western property line still provides that overall movement from commercial to higher density residential to lower density residential. So I really think what we're proposing now is actually a better product. And again, if we had the opportunity to answer some more questions about sidewalks and setbacks and things like that, we gladly would have. But unfortunately, we just didn't have the opportunity to. So
it's been kind of a crazy time, Scott. I can open the public hearing, and I don't think anybody has a lot of indigestion. I haven't been getting 10,000 phone calls or heard a lot of concerns. I think the main issue is just, need a little bit more detail on the plan as far as, the landscaping and a few more things, to use Buford's word, be memorialized on the plan rather than, quite so nebulous. But I can certainly open the public hearing and see if there's any comments from the public. We can get comments from the, from the commission. And then, if you'd like us to, we can, bring this up at the next meeting and give you a chance to, get those things on paper that the city staff's requesting.
Sure.
Okay. In that case, I'll go ahead and at this time, Scott, if you'll stay close, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Does anybody wish to speak to the changes of the ZC 2010 Clump Pud? If not, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. Commission members, do you all have any questions or concerns for the engineer while he's here?
It's Holly McKellar. I don't have any real questions. I do have some concerns that I'm just looking at a blank slate of nothing. And I'm visual, and I know that we've discussed this round and round about, having renderings and something to look at to visualize your concept. I mean, you're selling a project to us, and truly, if I got this and I was the teacher, it would be a D. And it's more or less because you're not selling what you're trying to portray is not coming across. I just see a bunch of, I don't know. I expect more, I guess. It's not that I hate the development. I just don't know what I'm looking at. What am I approving? Does it pass everything? Yeah, but I expect a little more from engineers and developers when they're trying to sell a project.
I agree with Holly. Scott, I think you've got to give us some more information for us to approve any kind of a change from what we approved before. My concern is the higher density up against the residential, basically up in the northwest corner. And but I agree with Holly. I mean, I'm looking at a clump. What I remember as a child is a cornfield. And there's not a whole lot of difference at this particular time except for the development around it. So you're going to have to give us some more info for us to be able to make a determination of whether these changes are going to be adequate.
Yeah, Scott, I totally agree with both of what they said. Frank Lloyd Wright says beauty is in the details. And I think and I don't disagree with what you're saying. I've driven through the, Old Battles Village apartments up there a number of times, think they're quite nice. And I see how they, could be a residential transition. But I think to use them as a residential transition, you need to show, what's the transition going to be? What's the landscape going to be? And, just a few details like that. I don't think anybody has a lot of heartburn over, what's here and the changes as much as just the details. The thing here is, what's in there, this is a very, very visible area in Fairhope. It's right catty-cornered from Walmart, tons of traffic, tons of people are going to see it. And how it looks. I mean, are you going to have an advanced auto zone with a steel building and total, asphalt and no landscaping that's, going to look horrible there? Or are you going to have, some buffering and have something that, looks nice? Even if it's the advanced auto zone, something with some buffering and parking and something that looks good. Same as the transition. The biggest issues are the visibility from the roads going by and the buffering from the residential in the rear. And I think that's where, not so much the staff, but I think the, Planning and Zoning Commission wants to see that detail so that we feel like we can make a good recommendation to the city council on this. And anybody else?
Is he gonna table it?
I can make a few comments, Lee, if that's okay.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Let's talk primarily about the commercial that borders the south and the east. I understand your desire to see a prettier picture, more visual, get you a better understanding. And we can do that. The problem is these are all commercial lots, and you're going to see each one of those lots as it's developed will come before you for site plan approval. So you'll certainly get any opportunity to see what's proposed there. My problem with showing you too much on those lots is we have no clue what they're going to be. And so, I mean, if we show you a drawing that will get Holly to give me a B+, then are you going to hold me to the fact that I put something that looks like a Chick-fil-A there and ends up being a auto park?
Well, we're not talking about a Chick-fil-A versus Auto Garden. We're talking about what type of buffering, what type of landscaping is going to be in the front for either of those. Is it going to be in our face and obtrusive, or is it going to be something that's going to be landscaped and buffered?
It's a missing landscape plan.
Those are the types of issues that we're looking at, Scott. Not anything to hamstring you of what's going on, but this is a PUD. It's like Art said, it's something special. So
you've got Scott, you've got a situation where you've got a PUD. You're asking us for modifications to a PUD, and at the same time, though, the underlying zoning for what you've got along Fairhope Avenue and 181 is the underlying zoning is B2. Well, I mean, I don't want to fight that battle, and I guess realistically, we're not going to have any say-so in terms of what they put there or how it looks if you don't give it to us in the PUD to start off with. But B2, for the most part, gives you the opportunity for anybody to do whatever they want to do there. And I don't think there's really a whole lot that we can say about it with the underlying zoning the way that it is. So, I mean.
So if we give you more detail for what we'll require from those lots for landscape and things like that,
that's all we're asking for.
Yeah,
that's that and that.
Yeah, and maybe, and it's certainly something that gives us the idea of some continuity. For example, as Hunter mentioned previously, building materials or things of that nature that will at least not look like a hodgepodge of the 4-lane at I-10 down in Daphne, where you've got every kind of building and structure and building material there is, from plastic to concrete. So I mean, just something that would add some kind of continuity. I mean, I'll give you a good example, Scott. I'm gonna give you one good example. Is a Dollar General, I think it's on 44, isn't it? Isn't it on 44?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's on 44, and it is probably one, in terms of a Dollar General, it's probably one of the most tastefully done Dollar Generals I've seen. But it was designed to go with the neighborhood. Well, you don't have to have a Hardee's that looks like a Hardee's. I guess a Hardee's sign is still going to be a Hardee's sign, but the construction of the building, certainly, we don't have to have a conglomeration of a big old giant mess, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Understood.
Make us feel good and warm and fuzzy.
Do you want us to table this, Scott, or do you want us to vote on it?
No, you're gonna vote it down, so I'd rather you just, just table it. Be
Good
fine.
choice.
All right. All right, we'll go ahead then. Thank you very much, Scott. And basically, we're not looking at, square footage and every little detail. Obviously, you don't know who the tenants are going to be, but just some kind of a form of, kind of what you're looking for and what you want there. I mean, I think it's in the developer's best interest. I don't think he wants something to go in there and look like garbage and hurt the values of the, hurt his values of the properties in back and the properties going in next door, whether it's commercial or residential. I mean, I think it's in his.
Garbage collection refuse spots at the back of the place fronting up on the apartment complex. I mean, that just makes sense.
Anyway, thank you very much, Scott. We'll see you next month.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, sir. Old new business. We've got requests for a one-year extension for Fairhope Falls Phase 3. Do I have
So moved.
a motion?
Second.
Any further?
Wait a minute, what? Honey, darling.
Any issues on any of these from our secretary? I'll ask first, and then under further discussion, because I have a motion to second. I'm not going backwards.
Okay, yeah, Buford,
And thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Emily. These are routine extension requests. And commissioners, you have Fairhope Falls Phase 3 and Old Battles Village Phase 4. The construction on each of those is in progress. Commissioners, my recollection is that we had the pre-construction meeting for Fairhope Falls Phase 3 in July. We had the pre-construction meeting for Old Battles Village Phase 4 in August. So both of these are in progress being built, but due to the time frames of preliminary plat approval, they need an extension. There's no objection from staff. And commissioners and Mr. Chairman, when you get through taking action on both of these, I need to make one additional note very quickly before we adjourn.
okay, except for, there are 4 on the agenda, but the last two, SD 1637 and 1703 regarding the verandas Phase 1 and Phase 3. Buford, do you want to address that?
Yeah, thank you, Emily, and that's what I was alluding to earlier. And so, commissioners, at the time of submission, the village subdivision that was approved last time for what was Phase 1 and Phase 3 of verandas had not been approved. So it was prudent for the applicant to submit an extension request for Phase 1 and Phase 3 of verandas. Those 2 phases, preliminary plat, was rendered null, void, and no effect by the village subdivision approval of what was formerly Phase 1 and Phase 3. So those two requests are now unnecessary and do not require action by the Planning Commission.
Got it. Thank you very much, Buford. All right, I've got a motion and a second for an extension for SD 1627 Fairhope Falls Phase 3. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed say nay.
Who was the second?
I got the second.
Jimmy.
Conyers. Okay. So that passed unanimously. Next item on the agenda, SD 1637, Old Battles Village Phase 4. Request of a one-year extension. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I've got a motion from Jimmy. Will you give me my second, Art?
Yeah, second.
Second for Art. I wanted somebody else to have a motion today. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. We've got one more piece of new business before we adjourn.
Thank you, Councilman, Commissioner. We had a request last month that was tabled by an applicant to request a rezone B2 on Greeno Road. Like to have a work session, and it's voluntary if you can't make it. January 17th at 3 p.m. but we need some feedback on.
December 17th.
Thank you. December 17th at 3 PM.
December 17th.
December
That's
17th.
all. That would be a week from Thursday if my mental calendar's correct.
You are correct.
And without having a mental calendar myself, because there's, for reasons beyond belief, but would you please remind?
And we will be virtual, so we can sit at home, and we'll have a space if you want to come up, but we'll send an invite out just like we do for
Yeah, just a
planning
heads
commissions.
up, like,
Sure.
so we don't miss a meeting because we didn't get a heads up.
We'll get that out tomorrow.
Very good.
In other words, Emily, please call Art at 11 o'clock Thursday morning. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Boy, Jimmy.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank everybody online. Hopefully this vaccine will come out and maybe March, we'll all be in here together.
Good night.
Good night. Glad you're feeling better, Holly.